What's up, guys? Coach Sepi here. Today we're going to look at algebraic inequalities, and more specifically, inequalities in quadratics. This is GCSE Maths module, and for the first example, we're going to look at solve x squared plus 4x plus 3, which is greater than 0. Firstly, we solve the quadratic, we factorize it into x plus 1, x plus 3, which is pretty trivial after you've solved a handful of quadratics and have an understanding of this. From here, we can understand that the two solutions to this equation are x equals minus 1 and minus 3. And the first method of this inequalities is that we know the graph will cross at x equals minus 1 and x equals minus 3. These are the two roots of the equation. So when we draw a parabola, we know that it will cross the x-axis at these 2 points. So we first draw the graph, and this is the second part of our methods. The next part, we look at the inequality, and it says this has to be greater than 0, which graphically means this equation has to be above at ground level at the x-axis. So then we look at the parabola again, and we look at the two root points, minus 3 and minus 1. First, we have to see, is the line above the ground at those points? So if a point at minus 1, firstly we'll look at that. We can see, is the graph continuing upwards? Is it above the ground? And it is. Therefore, x has to be greater than minus 1. Then we look at the minus 3. Is the graph above or below the ground? It's below. Because as you can see, after the minus 3 point, the parabola goes below the x-axis. Therefore, x has to be less than minus 3. Let's move on to another example where you guys will get a firmer understanding of this with repetition. So in the next case, we have x squared minus x minus 20 is less than 0. So unlike the previous example, this time it's less than 0. So we have to see, is the parabola below the ground, below the x-axis? You guys can now understand that this is more through inspection than theoretical, the method to solving this. So we already established that it's going to be below the x-axis. Next thing we do is write the roots, the points that it crosses the y. So it crosses the y at x equals minus 4 and x equals 5. And you will know this through solving the equation. Next, we draw the graph. And the roots will be minus 4 and 5. So these are the 2 points that a parabola will cross. So we draw that. It doesn't have to be a perfect drawing, by the way. Indicate the 2 points that are there. And we can see this time it's below the ground. So first, let's look at point x equals 5. Is the graph going below the ground or above the ground? Well, you can see it as continuing above the ground, so therefore x has to be less than 5. And we look at point minus 4. Is it going below the ground after the point? It is, so therefore x has to be greater than minus 4. You just have to look at the direction of the parabola and see, is it going above the ground or below the ground? In the next case, And the reason why we put those inequality signs is because if it's going below, then it has to be greater than that point. The x has to be within that range. But if it's not, then it has to be outside of that range. This time we have a 2x squared. So let's divide the whole equation by 2 to simplify it. And from experience and inspection, I can see that this time we can't factorize this very simply. So what we're going to do is use the quadratic formula to substitute in these values of a, b, and c to find firstly the roots of this equation. So the quadratic formula, if you guys remember, is minus b plus minus b squared minus 4ac, where in this case a is 1, b is minus 5, and c is 5. So we put minus 5 plus minus 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5, all of it over 2a, which in this case is 2 times 1. You can plug this into your calculator. And by the way, this is a standard method to solving algebraic inequalities. You first find the roots, then you see the inequality, see if it's above the ground or below the ground. You draw the graph, and you identify the inequality correctly. So x is equal to 3.61, and also 1.38 in this case. So with this knowledge, we can continue on to the graph, where now we know the roots are 3.61 and 1.38. So these are the 2 points that a parabola will cross the x-axis at and the y-axis. Next step we do is we identify the inequality. So it's less than 0. So please ignore this mistake. It's meant to be below the ground. I've made a written mistake. So it's meant to be below x in this case. So next thing we do is write down the graph and identify the 2 points that the parabola crosses once again, which is 1.38 and 3.61. And the parabola will go through these 2 points. Next thing we do, we look at point 3.61, and is the line going above the ground or below the ground at this point? No, it's not. So we do the opposite of the inequality, and therefore x has to be greater than 3.61. And for 1.38, is it going below the ground afterwards? No, it's not. So x has to be less than 1.38. And with this, I hope you guys can spot a regular pattern with this. Thank you guys for watching. Coach Sepi here, and I'm signing out. Peace.
What's up guys, hope you found that video educational. Now if you want to completely transform your maths abilities and take it to the next level with both A-level and GCSE maths, I provide weekly one-on-one maths tutoring lessons on my Patreon, where I help you with any topic that you're struggling with in maths, and I coach you to completely transform your mindset when it comes to maths. So follow the link in the description for that, check it out, peace.